Our hidden history objects for the month of May are 3 bound ledgers from the Waccamaw Line of Steamers. These books are today extremely fragile, their pages brittle with age, and their ink is barely legible. But these books tell of a time when life on our area rivers was more about commerce than recreation, when small steamboats were used to carry people to nearby summer resorts, and a time before bridges, coastal highways, and modern conveniences. They begin in 1903, which is a time in Georgetown's maritime history when river business was booming. Ships were moving in and out of the port so often that a citizen complained to the local paper about the steamers coming into the Sandpit River at full speed, blowing their whistles at all hours of the night and day. Large river steamers like those owned by the Clyde Steamship Line and the Baltimore and Carolina Steamship Company ran to the larger cities along the East Coast, carrying goods of all kinds. The smaller river steamers, such as the Comanche, the F.G. Burroughs, the Mitchell C., and the Ruth, were all owned by the Burroughs and Collins Company in Conway, South Carolina. These smaller vessels were ideal for easy trips between Conway and Georgetown, carrying a variety of cargo and often passengers to various stops in between. Georgetown's harbor had not always been such a busy and easily maneuvered spot. As far back as the 1880s, local businessmen and politicians worked to get the channel between Georgetown and the Atlantic Ocean dredged to allow larger vessels into the port. William D. Morgan, David Risley, and Walter Hazard were 3 of the men who urged those in the surrounding cities, counties, and even states to write letters to their lawmakers, urging the U.S. Congress to approve money for the River and Harbor Act. Local merchants such as J.B. Steele were in favor of the dredging project, for they understood that without it, Georgetown could not compete with the ports of Charleston and Wilmington. Money was finally given, and by the late 1880s, the waterways of Georgetown were being cleared of obstructions. The newly dredged channel was 12 feet deep and 80 to 100 feet wide. The U.S. Army of Engineers recommended that jetties be built, and by 1905 they were complete, at a cost of almost $2.5 million. Industries such as the Georgetown Rice Milling Company, the E.I. DuPont plant, and the newly built Atlantic Coast Lumber Company all stimulated the port activity, and the economy of Georgetown boomed. Local agents in Georgetown, such as B.A. Munnerlyn, worked for the Charleston, P.D., Santee, and Waccamaw Line of Steamers. Munnerlyn operated his wharf and warehouse in the 600 block of Front Street. After his death in 1908, his son, W.W. Munnerlyn, took over the business and reopened the wharf at the foot of Orange Street. Munnerlyn was the middleman, working with the larger vessels owned by the Clyde Steamship Company and the smaller river steamers, who would transfer their freight upon arrival in Georgetown. These small vessels were carrying naval stores, cotton, and lumber to Georgetown. But the river steamers had a short lifespan on the rivers, and factors such as improved railroad, the U.S.'s entrance into the World War I, and an exhausted local lumber industry made for a decrease in popularity for these river steamers. By the early 19-teens, these small vessels had also begun to carry passengers and were often used to carry them to summer resorts like North Island and Pawleys Island. In 1911, the Comanche is advertised as leaving the Market Wharf every Saturday evening at 5 p.m., carrying passengers to Pawleys Island. It left the landing at Hagley at 7 a.m. Monday morning, and the round-trip cost was only 75 cents. Selina McGregor Vaughan remembered the Comanche in her book, Pawleys as It Was. The Comanche was more of a passenger boat, and the Burroughs handled heavier freight. The Comanche had a dining room with a reputation for excellent food if a meal hour occurred while one was in transit. Its captain was Frank Sarvis. He had one arm crippled, but he was an expert in handling the boat and its crew. If the boats weren't in dry dock for some special reason, they made twice a week the run from town to Conway, stopping at landings en route such as Hagley, Waverly, or Bucksport to deliver passengers, freight, and mail. Their schedules weren't always to be trusted, but any change in timing was invariably carried by the mysterious grapevine. By the early 1920s, the company that owned the Burros and the Comanche had gone bankrupt, and their steamers were taken out of service. The Comanche, the Cornwallis, and other former steamers were converted to passenger ferries, as more and more people were traveling to Pawleys Island. By the end of the decade, an average of 500 passengers and 200 automobiles were being ferried out of Georgetown each day. Life on the river had changed for Georgetown County residents, with better roads, a new bridge, and an old river steamers became a thing of the past. Come back next month to find out what objects we will pull from our archives to reveal its hidden history.